so we should be ready to start. Let's give him a warm round of applause.
Working. Is this working? Can you hear me? Yes. Obrigado. So, so I always start thanking my family and my girlfriend. Ciao. And okay, so I'm going to talk about unlocking Ask innovations, how Fast API reaps the benefits. So, yeah, I'm just going to try to have fun because it's the last talk and I guess people are tired. So, yeah. So, start with I'm Marcelo. I am, oh, this is running on a well, it's fetching the images, but it's not loading. But anyway, I'm the maintainer of Unicorn and Starlet. It's supposed to have the icons there. I hope it's the only one that has, am I without connection here? Well, it doesn't matter. I hope I don't have anything that's not on the repository. Anyway, so what is ASCII? ASCII is the interface that is the one that comes after UASCII, which is the interface that tells how you interact between the application and the server. So WASCII was used for Django, Flask, and Unicorn, and all those that doesn't use async. And now, since 8 years ago, ASCII was created, and it tells how you communicate between the server, like Unicorn, and the application, like Fast API. And that's what I'm going to be talking here. I'm going to be talking about how the changes on that spec give a benefit to Fast API without Fast API doing anything. They just get the benefits from it. So, again, what's ASCII? ASCII is just this. It defines how you communicate between the server and the application. So it needs to define that in a way so they can understand each other. The server needs to understand the application and the other way around. So you define this interface where you have an application, and then you pass the scope, receive, and send. Receive is used for the application to get information from the server, and send, it's from the application to send information to the server. So it just works in two ways. You receive and you send, as much as logical as it might sound, but you receive certain information from the server, like, for example, you receive bytes from a body, you receive if the server was disconnected, the client was disconnected from the server server disconnected from the client, and you send information like the response back, the headers, the body, and all that stuff. The scope, you just have the information about the connection itself. So you get the path, the headers, and all related information that are part of the connection. So, why does Fast API follows ASCII? Well, pretty much it's because Fast API is a class that inherits from Starlet. So, and since Starlet follows ASCII, Fast API just gets that. I don't think there was a bigger thought on what Fast API could do. Like, there was no option because Starlet follows it. And Starlet was created 6 years ago by Tom Christie. And Tom Christie was already involved in the conversations and all on the things related to the creation of the spec itself. The spec has also around 8-9 years. And Unicorn has 8 years, so it was around that time where Unicorn was also created. And 2 years after, well, Starlet was created, the server was already being created by the same person, so it did make sense to create a web framework that was also following the same specification. And that's why Fast API uses ASCII. So now we start, we're going to talk about some features that Fast API has that not a lot of people know about them. Also because it's not documented in the Fast API documentation. So I'm just going to briefly talk about them. And those features were introduced in the last 30, 65 days, I would say. So for example, I'm going to talk about the WebSocket denial response, which is a way for you to define which kind of HTTP response you're going to send back to the client. when you want to reject the upgrade for the WebSocket. Okay, so hold on. Okay, so well, who have used WebSocket in FastAPI here? Huh. Install it? Oh, it works. Install it as well. Any WebSocket in your life. Ah, much better. I should have started with that. Yeah. So anyway, do you know what happens if you? Well, no, that's a bit, let me do a rephrase the question. What do you think it happens here if you send? We try to connect with a client on a WebSocket client, and you send a request to this endpoint. Who thinks is going to connect successfully? Okay. Who thinks is going to send a 500 error? Okay, anyway, so I'm going to tell you. What happens here is that the FastAPI, well, the underneath, the UVcorn will send back a 403 because you actually didn't have an acceptance of the WebSocket. So you closed before actually accepting it. So since you didn't have the acceptance, then you cannot send a close frame, which is trying to do, send a close frame. That doesn't happen. So it sends a 403. Produção. Yeah. So that's what happens. It sends a 403. And it sends a 403 because it was a way for the ASCII spec to say that you need to send some HTTP status code when you close a frame before acceptance. That's what it was written there. And then they created the WebSocket denial response extension on the specification. That gets a bit complex, but it's just in a way that you can now choose which status code you can send to the client. So now you can do this. You can do this with FastAPI. This can happen since, I don't know, 3 months or something. So you can define a response, and you can define what you want to send. So instead of 403, I want to send 401. So I do this, define a response, and I send back with WebSocket send denial response. Okay? So that's useful when you want to send back a response and not accept the WebSocket connection. And now, since, well, 2 days ago, since I discovered that this was not possible, I implemented it on Starlet. So it is going to be available on the next FastAPI release that supports Starlet. So we're going to be able to do the same as this is doing, but only sending an HTTP exception. So you're going to, those two are analogous codes, this one and this one, just raising the exception. Starlet underneath will capture this and then send a 401 to the client. And this would be more a practical example on how this would be useful. But you'd have probably this underneath. You would not implement this on each endpoint body. But this would be like, if the token that you're sending to me, like authorization header, is something that should authorize my user, then I accept the connection, the WebSocket. Otherwise, I send back a 401 saying that I don't want. Okay. Yep. Now, HTTP trailers. Who knows what HTTP trailers are? I see a hand there. Thank you. So, HTTP trailers are a way for you, well, for any application to send back to the client some information after the response body or all the data that you really wanted to send was sent already. For example, you can have information about, imagine you are streaming data and you don't know how does the data look like in the beginning, right? So you start streaming data and send data and then sending data and send data, and you have a lot of data to send, the client receives all the data, and you want to confirm that the integrity of the data. So you'd send a header that will have a hash of the whole data, and then you make sure that this data was not modified in the way or something like that. You can also have the server timing response to check the time of the whole request, and then you send this. It's pretty much headers that comes, like HTTP headers, but it can come after the response is sent back. And this is also one of the things that FastAPI supports. Also not very useful, it might be, used. And UVCron supports it out, well, it already has its support. So if you do it with, if you can do already with FastAPI, you can send trailers, HTTP trailers already. Okay. Who knows what's happening here without me saying it? Haha. Okay, yeah. So, so this is a pure. Thank you. This is a pure ASCII application. This is just FastAPI underneath. It's just the pure spec how it is. So you have on the line 3, you have how the spec defines it to the application. How does it look like? And then you need to send the first message, which the HTTP response start, where you send the stats code and then the headers. And here I'm sending that I want the content MD5 header. And then I send each chunk here. And then I update the, well, how I'm going to calculate the hash. And then I calculate the hash. And then I send the hash back on the trailers. So this is the idea. You send the body. Line 13, you send the whole body. Sorry, you send the last message of the body. And then on line 14, you send these HTTP trailers. You can already do this with FastAPI itself. But you'd have to implement it yourself, this last part. So FastAPI doesn't have support for this underneath. I had a pull request on Starlet to implement it, but it didn't go through because it just added a bit more complexity that I wanted to, and it didn't look like there were many people interested on this feature specifically. Yeah, so I had this pull request. It was closed. I opened it. I closed. No one replied anything. So I just, yeah, I closed. But I mean, if someone wants to do something with HTTP trailers, maybe it doesn't have much motivation since, you know, but it's still something you can investigate. Like I found out what this thing was about when I saw it written on the specification itself. So then I learned what it is. Maybe it's only me who knows what it is. I don't know. But anyway, so move. Yeah, anyway, you can create an open source project that supports that on FastAPI. Like it uses the same response classes, like response, reason response, and you can add these trailers as another parameter if you want. If you want to do some open source or something, I don't know. But then, yeah. So now next feature. This is actually good. Everybody benefits from this. And people actually have faced some problem with client disconnection. Like if you develop with FastAPI for some time, you do have a problem with this at some point. It was historically fixed, some of the stuff over time. People don't notice, but stuff are being fixed. But anyway, so these, again, pure ASCII application. Imagine a client send a request here. So I'm going to explain first. On line 5, you're just making sure this is an HTTP request or HTTP context. Line 7, I'm sending the first message, just headers and status code. And from line 9 to 13, I'm sending just the bytes of hello world. So H, E. It looks really cool on curl when you see H, E, L, L, O. But anyway, so, and then you have, so we just send those. And at the end, you just send the last message, which sends back, like the client knows that this ended. This is what is happening. But then, what happens if the client disconnects in the middle of this? What if the client disconnects, like I'm on the letter O, on the hello, and the client disconnects? Who thinks this application stops? Yeah, so this application will not stop. So if you just send, well, this application wouldn't stop before. So right now it does stop. Well, actually, no, I'm sorry, it doesn't stop. Let's continue with that, yeah. But it potentially will stop. So this doesn't stop because you have no way, like based on the spec, to know that the client was disconnected. Because with the send message, you cannot know if the client was disconnected. So you just don't know. The spec didn't specify that. You just can only know if you call the receive. What is it? You call the receive, and then you get a disconnected message, right? So this is a bit more complex stuff. But I want you to look at lines 8 to 11, where I create two tasks. One that continues to send the bytes, which is the send chunks, which is the same logic as we had before. And the other is the check disconnect. The check disconnect, if we go to line 14 to 19, I'm just running the await receive, and I am checking if I receive an HTTP disconnect. If I did, I set the stop event, and then it stops on the chunk. That's what is happening. But as you can see, this is complex. And not only complex, but you can have other parts of the application. So for example, if you want to receive data from the client is streaming data, and you want to stream data back to the client. So you kind of receive, process, and send back, receive, process, send back. It cannot happen if you have a task that is checking the disconnect, because it will steal from me the message. So it's really, so if I have a task that's running on the background that's doing the same as I am doing right now, if like two tasks doing the same, then they might steal from me the message from the body that I received. Because this receive does not only checks for disconnect, but it receives the body of what the client is sending to me. So it can happen like, oh, I got the body. No, you got the body. So it's like something you want to avoid. So right now, it's not possible to receive and send, unless you are doing, well, actually, it's not possible. But then, this year, or it was last year, Adrian, a colleague of mine, who also maintains Starlet, he created this amend on the specification. So it says pretty much that when you use the send method, you now receive an OS error exception. Yeah. So now it is possible with the first code that I show you to just raise an exception and the application stops. Okay? Yeah, so this is what's supposed to happen. You have this is the perfect world. So you have the chunks, you're sending it, sorry, and then you accept AO error is the same as OS error, something with Python 2, they make it the same name or something like that. I don't know which one is I think the OS error is the current one, on the Python 3, who knows? Someone knows? Well, I don't know. It's either one was on the Python 2 and then it becomes on Python 3. They change the name. They are the same thing. Anyway, so yeah, so now when you call the send and it was disconnected, then you have an exception and then you get disconnected. But this was actually not implemented on Unicorn yet. What was implemented on Unicorn was on WebSockets. So now on WebSocket, if you send text or send bytes or send JSON, you do have the WebSocket disconnect from, well, I think it's from FastAPI as well. It just copy paste from Starlet, it's directly from Starlet. And before you couldn't do this. So this is just something that FastAPI benefits out of the box. The next step would be to implement on the HTTP part, and then being able to receive from the client and streaming back. Do this streaming back thing. Oh, really? Thank you. He said 5 minutes. Crazy. So next step would be to implement that on Unicorn. It was actually implemented that I had to revert because it got a bit more verbose because you were able to actually see when it was disconnected, and people thought there was a problem on that. So there was a bit of confusion, and to avoid the amount of issues that were being created, we reverted because we are trying to smooth that down. some way. Well, actually, we're trying is a bit strong. It got stopped at some point, but ideally would smooth that feature to the users so they could stream in and stream out. Because you sometimes want to just receive the stream, process, and then send back. It's just faster to do this. So that would be the next step, implement on Unicorn, and then conclusion. Some features Fast API just gets free, and no one notices. Or maybe no one needs it as well, HTTP trailers. I don't know, it happens. Yeah, it happens a lot. But yeah, hope you had fun with the stand-up, and that's it. Yeah. Oh, hold on. So I have this repository, cluedex/fast API tips. Just has some tips. It helps. About trailers, yeah. No, I'm gonna add today. No trailers there. Yeah. And peraí, pô. Oh, you were taking picture? No. Oh, okay. Yeah. Samuel's here. Bad boss. So we have a coupon for Logfire. We are from Pydantic, Pycon PT 2024. Use it. And yeah, thank you.
You still have 5 minutes. You only used up 2. That's fine. Okay, so let's have questions from. If you have any questions for Marcelo, just raise your hand and I'll run to you awkwardly with a microphone. We have 8 minutes to fill up, so come on, one question for Marcelo, please. Yes, excellent.
Thank you for the talk. So with that client error, client disconnect error, was there any thought on backwards compatibility, or like are people servers now just erroring out every time a client disconnects?
There was. So that's why. Oh, that's why we reverted. On HTTP, because on WebSocket, I think it was actually a fix, because on send you were actually having exceptions from WebSockets, like the package, and also from WS Proto. So there were kind of you as a user you don't expect those exceptions. So implementing this was actually a fix on WebSockets itself, because now Starlet can know that Unicorn sends OS error, and then it transforms to WebSocket disconnect, and then you know. So that would fix, like, there was no need for thinking about the backward compatibility. But for Starlet, it is a bit more complex, because on Starlet, we would need to check the version of the ASCII server that's running. And I know it's the obvious thing to do, but we just never did it. So we don't check the version of the spec on Starlet. I don't know, like, it's just no one, usually the spec never breaks stuff, so we never checked stuff from the, I don't know if it makes sense, but that's what's the idea.
Thanks.
Yeah.
All right, I'll cut the awkward silence short. I'll remind you that this was the last scheduled talk, but up next we have lightning talks. And I see you seem pretty hesitant to submit one idea, so let me just ask you something really quickly. This past week, who has learned something new? Okay, a couple of hands up. So why don't you go to the board that's hidden behind the banner, you write down your name, and you just tell us in 30 seconds or in 60 seconds that new thing you learned, because it's probably going to be either interesting or helpful, probably both. All right, so you just sign up over there, and lightning talks will be happening in roughly 10 minutes, I believe. See you soon. Hello, everyone. Our day is coming to... No, what's... Wait. How does English work? The day is almost over. That works, right? Yeah, the day is almost over. What we're going to have now is 4 lightning talks. Apparently, after I bothered you again, 2 more people signed up, which is better than 0, absolutely. But tomorrow, I hope the board is filled with lightning talk submissions. All right, and I'm going to explain exactly how this works now so that tomorrow you're not afraid of signing up. So lightning talk is a very short talk on a topic, any topic. It can be about Python, it doesn't have to be about Python. It's typically about something that you are passionate about, and those tend to be the best lightning talks out there. I've watched a lot of good lightning talks, and the best ones were not about Python. Last year at Pycon Portugal, we had a talk about a small robot that just walked around, for example. That was very interesting. That's suitable. So I said it's a very short lightning talk. Typically, you have a 5-minute limit. It tends to be strictly enforced. It depends on the number of people lined up, but it's 5 minutes maximum. It doesn't have to be 5 minutes. It's up to 5 minutes. And when the time is over, the person keeping track of time, which today will be me, starts clapping. You join me in clapping, and we clap the speaker off stage if they're still talking, which is actually pretty fun. All right, so those are the ground rules. Does it make sense? Excellent. So now, why? Sure. So now my time is over. Let's welcome Martin on stage.
Hey, look at that, straight away. Oh, come on. Yeah. Hi. My name's Martin, and I am a Swiftie. For at least 15 years, probably getting on for 20, I have been a fan of Taylor Swift's music, and I am a particular fan of her lyrical work, right? I am a massive fan of music. I'm sorry, Nick. I like music with words in it. However, there are a lot of forums in the world where people discuss Taylor Swift's lyrics. I know, I've looked. If, however, you are a software developer and a sort of wannabe data scientist, you create yourself a Swiftie lyric bot that you can use to ask it and to determine and to discuss themes, meanings, find particular songs that mean particular things. This is powered by GPT-4, and if you were listening to Nick's presentation earlier, you will know that GPT and all of the other large language models make stuff up. And the best way to stop them making stuff up is by giving them really good context, really good data. So this is the lyrics to Taylor Swift songs. There are 571 in the data set that I created. So if you are a software developer Swiftie like me, you take all of these lyrics, all 571 of them, you push them through a Python process, use OpenAI to extract entities and relationships. And what I mean by entities, outcomes, emotions, people, places, things like that. And then you find relationships between those entities. So that on the right represents an entity relationship or a graph of the story of the song Love Story. Romeo proposes to Juliet. Juliet's role is... Anyway, you get the idea. Right. Juliet, forbidden love with Romeo, you kind of get the idea. All right. And this is what that graph looks like. And you can use this graph. So this is a graph of... This is only the first 100 nodes within a graph that contains 50,000 nodes and a similar number of relationships. This is to the extent to which I went to understand the lyrics in Taylor Swift songs. And we can use this graph to find interesting things, such as, let's have a look at this one. This is the entities and relationships that you saw within that particular song transferred into something that an LLM would understand. This is real factual information that I have extracted from that song. Person Romeo proposed to person Juliet. Person Romeo talked to person Juliet. Person Romeo is in a relationship with a person who he calls a princess. We get the idea. And by using this information and with that chatbot, I can create something that has more meaning, and is based in factual words, right? Somebody said to me, like, this is just unstructured data. And I'm like, oh, no. Well, wouldn't it be better if it was like documentation or something? Like, no, because that's really boring. What's not boring is like creating a really obscure technology solution for a problem that doesn't really exist. And I would encourage you all to do that. And if you want to find it, there you go. That's where it is. And if you want to learn a little bit more about how I do that, there is a workshop tomorrow. Thank you all.
All right, for our next speaker, I'm going to invite myself onto the stage. So, thank you. Hey there. Are you ready? Yes, I am.
Are you tracking your own time, Rodrigo?
I will. Now, will I be lying? We don't know. So the timer is on. Now let me ignore it. All right, so many microphones, I'm so confused. So this is a function I want to refactor with you. And the name should be pretty self-explanatory, but the way, or what this function does is it accepts what I call an expression, which is just a string that will be composed of parentheses, and I'm checking if the parentheses are well balanced. If whenever I open a parenthesis, I close it, and if I don't try to close parentheses that were not opened, and that I don't open parentheses that I don't close. So that's more or less the idea, and I have a couple of examples down here. Now, can I get them? Yes, I can. All right, so this is more or less what the function does, right? And I wrote this code, and I thought to myself, well, good for you, Rodrigo, but why are you doing maths with booleans, and why are you using accumulate? Why does this look so complicated? You can just make this much simpler. And so what we can do is we can actually unravel this into simpler code, which might be easier to understand, you know, that doesn't use features that are really not needed here. So what I can do is I can go over each character in the expression, and I'll give you a hint. For some reason, the setup here is very tilted, so live coding is extra difficult here because my hands are like this. But I'll go over the characters and I'll check if the character is an opening parenthesis. And if it is, then the depth of the nesting increases by 1, right? That's the point. If the character is a closing parenthesis, can I do it? Barely. Whoops. Keyboard shortcuts I didn't know existed. Then the depth decreases by 1. Let's make this an elif. Now, if the depth is negative, we have an issue, right? The depth should never be negative. So in this case, the nesting is not valid. And by the time I'm done, I should check if the nesting is 0. Does this look more or less equivalent? No. Okay. Well, you can believe me. It looks more or less equivalent. But then I get the same problem. Why am I look at this code and I think, why am I using so many complicated features? Why augmented assignment? Why am I doing this? Why don't I just use, I don't know, dunder methods, right? I don't need assignments. That's ridiculous. This should work just fine. And same thing, not an equals equals. I can just do depth dot sub 1. Same thing. I don't need augmented assignment. That's an unnecessary feature. I don't even need I think it's just best if I use the type directly. I swear to God, it's going to look much better. So this is not strictly equivalent, but in this context it is. So that's going to be good enough for our purposes. And then, why do I stop here? Why do I need comparison operators? Why don't I just use the dunder method that we all know and love? That's definitely the same thing. This is getting so much better because now everyone understands it. Because I don't need to use features that people don't know. I'm just using the core of Python. That's what I'm using here. For example, I can just compare C and this. I don't need the equality comparison, and the same thing here. I can just do string.dunder equals C, and then the closing parentheses. This is same thing, right? Isn't it looking much better? I don't know why they're laughing. And now what I can do is, now we're going into some weird territory because it's not clear whether or not I'm really removing something that I should, because up until now I clearly was. But I don't really need the ifs here. I can just operate directly on the values. So what I'll do is, you see the 1 over here? I'll just copy and paste because I don't feel like typing. So I'll take this and I'll move it here. And I'll get rid of that and I'll unindent. Now this is equivalent because I'm only adding when there's a match. And I can do the same thing down here. I can take, where is it? I can take this and I can move it here instead of the 1. And I can delete that, unindent, and get rid of this line. And now I have an issue with nesting of parentheses on my own function, which is hilarious. Right? It's much better. And now my time is almost over. Oh no. But we're also almost done, because for loops, they're not really needed. You don't need a for loop. You can just use a while loop, because it's the same thing. So what you do is, you create an iterator here. Really, just a for loop is just syntactic sugar for this. And then you try to get the next value out of your iterator. And people keep laughing. I don't understand why. Maybe this is why I was fired. And then if you get a stop iteration, then you break. Actually, yeah, you just break. And otherwise, you just keep going. Now, booleans are also a bit overkill. So let me just do this. And I forgot to change the equals equals here, but I think you get the idea. So I think this is much better. If you agree, you can clap. If you don't agree, you can also clap. And tomorrow, I'll tell you why I was fired in my talk. Thank you. Up next, we have Michele. Michele. I knew I was going to butcher that. So let's give Michele a warm round of applause.
Does it? Oh, okay. Okay. Can you see my screen? Okay. Yeah, great. Okay, so am I a very experienced Python developer? No. So I have been a Scala developer for some years. This is not prepared. I prepared it 5 minutes ago when there weren't enough people to do flash talks. So this is going to be about my experience passing from Scala to Python and some personal opinions about both languages. So for those who don't know, so Scala is a functional programming language, well, half functional, half object-oriented, built on top of the JVM. And it's great at some things and not great at some other things. And so in my talk today, I'm going to tell you about things that I like about Scala and things that I like about Python in my very short experience. And then you can make of it whatever you want. Cool. So, so things that I like about Scala. So Scala is great for some stuff, but it's not great at everything. So I'll tell you what I like about it. So it has a very, very solid type system, so solid I would almost say it's draconian, and it's great for some stuff, but it's kind of a pain for other stuff. So, but you know, nothing is perfect. So, something that I really like about Scala is that it encourages you, doesn't force you, but it encourages you to use immutability, which in some cases can be a very, very good thing. Think of parallel programming or asynchronous programming can be very, very nice to have stuff that doesn't change, mutable stuff. Referential transparency is a concept in Scala and in general functional programming languages that is really, really good. And there are some nice patterns that we use in Scala, some patterns that are not used as often in other languages. Think of, if you think about like the ACA framework, the actor system is quite nice, or like newer versions of Scala, newer frameworks have this idea of functional effects, and it's all very powerful. But let's talk about like the really important stuff. So like functional programming can be really, really good fun. So do I encourage you to use Scala? Well, I mean, why not? I mean, if you have a moment and, you know, that's a good idea. If I can suggest that there is a great book in Scala, so if you want to learn Scala the hard way, but the very satisfactory way, is to read Functional Programming in Scala by Paul Cusano. It's a fantastic book, and I recommend it. It's a bit like playing Dark Souls. When you understand how to do something with this book, it feels like beating a boss in Dark Souls. Okay, great. So next thing, I'm going to show you what I really like in Python in my very short experience with it. So, and this is something that I saw also in this conference and I really liked. And there is a focus on simplicity that you don't find in other languages. So in other languages, and I think that Scala is a bit, not great for that. There is a focus on complexity and mathematical complexity. And that's great. And there is a time and space for that. But in Python, I really like the focus of how can we make onboarding of other people like easier. And I think it's a great thing that I really enjoy about the community. And the community seems to me very large compared to smaller languages like Scala, for example. And well, that's my experience, but again, probably there are many factors that contribute to that. But the pipelines, because you don't have to compile the code, and there are ways that you can make the pipelines, CI/CD pipelines, faster in Python. But that's open to debate. I mean, it could be just my experience, and I'm noticing that programming languages in general, this is not just Python, but they are tending to become kind of all the same. So many of the features that used to be exclusive to one language. I'm thinking of, so I didn't know that Python now has pattern matching, and that's quite nice. So now it has pattern matching, and before you could find that in languages like Haskell or Scala, but it's very nice to see that various features are finding their way there. And something that I really like about Python, for example, is that dealing with JSON, for example, is so much simpler than Scala, for example. Parsing JSON is great, and I really like these comprehensions. So that's me. So if you want to have a chat, please come approach me. We can have a coffee together. And if you have any good book recommendations, please let me know. That's it. Thank you. Thank you.
Book recommendation for people moving into Python is the Quick Python book by Naomi Cedar. It's written precisely for that. You already know programming, now you want to know Python. So.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. Bye.
I just want to go back to this talk. Scala, things I like, solid type system, it's draconian, I don't like it that much. Okay. And for the last lightning talk of the day, let's welcome Maxime on the stage.
Hey. Hey. It works. Hello? Okay. I know to switch in between languages is complicated. Also, if we speak about Scala and Python, and also if we speak about really languages. And my talk is about languages and what we should not translate. Before I start, special thanks for my family. For my wife, Elena, for my children, Mark and Maya, and for my animals, Marcel and Kisa, and special thanks for my daughter, Maya. He created the illustration for all my presentation in this year, and Mark also helped. And who I am, my name is Maxim Danilov. I work many years with software development, and since 2010, I work with to organize translations for web resources. I start to work with PHP, and right now I work with Python and Django. This is a link to all my talks in this year. And what is software translation pyramid? We have collected instructions to localize our software. We have also the specification how we can internationalize sorry, our software, and we have also the bunch of tasks if we want to globalize our application. If you want to know localization, how I pass my application to some country, internationalization, how I pass my application to language, and globalization, how I pass my application globally to go to market on this country. And of course, we always speak about translations, and sometimes created solution is genius. Thank you, IKEA. It's genius, it's clever, and I know this is the really genius idea to create those instructions. But sometimes something goes wrong and something is too long. For example, Batman. And it's really too long. Probably you can see it in different applications. For example, something like this. And I completely don't understand what is on the first line, because this is a big sentence. And sometimes something it's too short or don't have enough place to write something like this. And sometimes we are simply not able to write something because it's not accepted. But we can translate it, we can skip it, but one thing you should never translate. And what is it? What is exactly you should never translate? This is example from a website from Pycon Taiwan. There I also should made a talk. And this is languages. Please don't translate the name of languages on websites. It should be always written in language in which this language, in language of country, there this language is applied. Thank you, and see you on my workshop about translations. On Saturday, I show you how translate how to create a multi-language application from scratch with Python and Django in 2 hours. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Maxim. Thank you, folks. This was it for today. I hope to see you back here tomorrow at 9 a.m. Cheers.
You do need to come earlier.